Hey everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So on today's video we are continuing my beginner witchcraft series and we are doing a video all about energy sensing. So energy sensing is a really popular topic that I've touched upon in live streams and other videos, but I've never actually done a video on it, and I'm not sure why. I might have filmed a video but then forgot to edit it, which honestly sounds about like the kind of thing I would do. So today this video is all about energy sensing and my personal techniques for doing it. Now, just before we get started, I do just want to say that there are lots of techniques for energy sensing. The techniques that I'm going to be talking about today are the ones that I use personally and that I have had the most success with. Now, because witchcraft is a very personal practice, these are only the things that I find really useful and really effective. You might find something different will work better for you. So if you try out the technique in this video and you don't find that it works for you, there are other techniques out there that might work better. It's all about figuring out which ones work best for you and finding the right fit for you and your personal style of practice. So with that being said, let's get on with the video. So first up, I suppose I should answer some questions. What is energy sensing? Now, energy sensing is the ability to sense the energy around us. Now, a lot of people have the ability to sense their own energy quite easily, but it's the ability to sense external energies that we're going to be focusing on today. The ability to sense the energy of the earth, the energy of plants and items, of stones and of people. It's essentially the ability to sense and recognize energies outside of yourself. So because energy sensing allows you to sense energies outside of yourself, it becomes useful for many different people. But why is energy sensing useful? Now, energy sensing is used by a whole collection of individuals. Now, typically, because my channel is witchcraft and magical practitioner focused, let's start with magical practitioners. Now, a lot of witches and other magical workers will use energy sensing as a way to identify and sense energies outside of themselves that they may want to draw on or work with. This practice is used really frequently when people are picking out stones, crystals, jewelry, when they're choosing herbs and items to add into spell work and ritual, when they're choosing which tools and items want to work with them. They will also often use energy sensing to identify whether a plant is willing or not willing to allow you to take a small piece of it, and it also allows you to identify where pockets of energy are that you might want to draw on, such as the earth's energy, the energy of plants and stones. It allows you to essentially sense and communicate with energetically different items within your magical practice. So you'll oftentimes hear of people referring to asking a tree for its permission to take a branch. And this is usually done via energetic communication through energy sensing. When people are picking out crystals and stones that they might want to work with, they are sensing that energetic vibration and deciding on a crystal based on what they receive information-wise from energy sensing. Now, outside of simply magical practice and witchcraft, energy sensing is also often used by divination readers, particularly those that work with cards, runes, or ogham. Now, this is typically used during the shuffling or identifying process, i.e. when we're shuffling the cards and we need to know when to stop. It is usually the energetic answer of the cards, of the runes, of the ogham that tells us that that is the one that we need to pick on, or that is when we need to stop shuffling. So a lot of times when you hear someone say, talking about tarot or oracle cards, that you shuffle until it feels right. This is often done by energy sensing when the cards are essentially telling you to stop. The same also applies to ogham and runes, witches' runes as well. Essentially any item that you are using it and you need to communicate or gain an energetic answer out of it. Now, this technique can also be used for people who want to communicate with spirits and entities. The ability to sense the energy that is happening around us allows us to pick up on energies that maybe we wouldn't notice through other means. So while some members of the community are capable of seeing, hearing, smelling, or sensing spirits, there are some people who will pick up on the energies that spirits give off. And so by energy sensing, you may be able to pick up on spirits within your area and your local vicinity that you maybe wouldn't have noticed or acknowledged being there through any other means. And then the last main collection of people that do use energy sensing are energy healers. Individuals that work with energies to assist medication and medical treatment to better the lives of the people that they are working on, whether that is themselves or someone else. These individuals will typically use energy sensing to pick up energy blockages or any energy impurities that might be negatively impacting an individual, whether physically, mentally, spiritually, or psychologically, depending on their expertise. So there's so many people that use energy sensing, and it's honestly quite unusual, at least I have found, to have people actually talking about it. It's almost always, in my experience, been something that's implied, but never outright spoken about, which I think is a real shame because it makes it very cryptic, especially for beginners who do want to get into energy work. They're told how to cast a circle and how to ground, but if they don't know how to energy sense, then it makes it very difficult to progress onto more advanced practices that maybe require it and they don't know how to do it. So that is a basic rundown of what energy sensing is and why you might use it and the kind of people that choose to use it. Now, energy sensing can essentially lead you to bigger and better things. Energy sensing can allow you to work with spirits, to work with entities outside of yourself, to work with energies of nature and wildlife, and anything outside of your own energy pool. It essentially allows you to work easier with spirits and with external energies. It can also assist in working with deities and also energy healing, tarot reading, and the like. But how do you actually do it? Now, when I teach energy sensing, I try to keep it as simplistic as I can. If this is the first video of mine that you're watching and you don't know anything about the beginner practices of witchcraft, things such as mind clearing, centering, grounding, visualization, and the like, I would recommend checking out the other videos in this playlist first. I have put the playlist in an order so that you can really catch up with where we are. Otherwise, this might get just a little bit confusing, and I don't want any of you to get disheartened if you can't do something that's halfway through my beginner series if you've missed the episodes beforehand, because everything really does tie together towards the end. So we as people, as well as everything around us, is made up of energy. This energy we can work with, we can manipulate, we can add intention to, we can release into the world to assist us in manifesting physical change through witchcraft and magical practice. Some people will use that energy to assist in psychic abilities, to commune with spirits, to undertake energy healing. Now, for most people, they typically stick to their own energy. They stay within their own lane, they work with what they have available to them. And this is a really good place to start. So I would recommend, if you haven't already, watching my video on energy manipulation, because this is going to give you some really good tips that we're going to be building on in this video. So we've looked at what energy sensing is, the kind of people that might use it and why they might want to use it. But how do you actually do it? Now, the technique that I'm going to be talking about today is the technique that I have used for the longest time. I have had the most success with it. And it's a little bit complicated to explain, but once you understand the basis of it, it'll be much easier for you to understand the kind of practice that we're going to be doing. Now, when it comes to energy sensing, there are going to be some people who are better at it than others. Some people will have what I like to refer to as miraculous energy sensing. And by this I mean they will just naturally be able to instantly pick up on energy that's around them. You will often find this in people that are empaths or people that are highly sensitive to energies. You might find that they immediately can sense energies around them without even trying. For other people, it can be a little bit more difficult. So hopefully the technique I'm going to be sharing today is suitable for everyone. This technique doesn't rely on instantaneous or miraculous energy sensing. It isn't necessarily going to allow you to immediately pick up on energies 24/7, which actually, in my opinion, can actually be very draining. This form of energy sensing is purposeful energy sensing. Essentially, it means that you are actively participating in the energy sensing when you want to sense energy. And when you don't want to sense energy, you simply don't undertake this technique. It stops you from constantly being bombarded with energy, which I find a lot of people are when they do get into energy sensing. If they don't yet know how to control or limit that energy sensing, it can get very overwhelming very quickly. This particular energy sensing technique I like to refer to as tendrils, because that's essentially what it is. Now, for me, this is all based off the principle of otters smelling underwater. Now, I know that that might sound like a very strange analogy, but otters, despite being air-breathing and not being able to breathe underwater, are capable of smelling underwater for one simple reason. They blow out air bubbles and then they breathe them back in again. Now, this is completely safe for them to do because they are just breathing out air and then breathing it back in again. But the process of pushing out that air and then bringing it back in allows scent particles in the water to attach itself onto that air bubble so that when the otter breathes it back in again, it can essentially smell underwater. This is what we are doing with this technique of energy sensing. We are going to be releasing tendrils, extensions of energy out into the world around us, which we then draw back again so that we can sense the energy that we've interacted with. So this technique of releasing energy and then drawing it back in again, it can be used on both large and small scales. On a large scale, you can release that energy over your entire body and it can fill an entire room before you draw it back into yourself. This allows you to sense the energy of an entire space and is often what people use when they are sensing spirits because it allows us to see almost an energetic map of the space. But you can use this on very small scales to sense the energy of crystals and small items. To do this, you do the same technique over just a small area like your fingers or your hand, and it allows you to simply sense the item that you're holding instead of the items all around you. Ultimately, the goal in this technique is not to lose energy. It is to have control over it at all times, which is why the other techniques that I've spoken about prior to this are really significant. You need to have control over that energy, otherwise you will lose it and you will become drained. The goal here is to push out energy and then draw all of it back in again, as well as the extra information that it's picked up from the space, the people, the spirits, or the items that you are wanting to sense the energy of. Now today we're going to be doing this over a small scale. We're just going to be doing this into your hand. This allows you to practice yourself by holding different items, whether they be stones, crystals, plants, objects, metals, to see if you can sense the energy differently depending on what it is that you are holding. And over time, with practice, you may well be able to identify the energy of different stones and crystals and different plants simply by the way their energy feels to you. So once you have learned this on a small scale, you can then just size it up and ultimately end up sensing the energy over an entire room. But to start off with, I would recommend starting small, just in case you don't pull in all of that energy so you don't drain yourself too much. But if you do ever feel yourself getting drained, do the centering and grounding exercise that I've previously spoken about and make sure that you drink some water and have something to eat. That way you can really regain and recuperate that energy before you try again. So, to start off with, we're going to want to center. Now to center, we take all of the energy that's around our bodies and we're going to center it into a central location. That is a lot of centers that I've said so far. Now for me, this central location is my stomach, but maybe that's because I'm food driven. It's not going to be like that for everyone. Now where it is going to fall is entirely natural to you, and it's simply a case of finding where it feels most comfortable to sit that energy. Now many people are going to visualize this energy differently. For me, I see it as being either a ball of golden or a ball of blue light, kind of like a neon light. But for some people it might look like goo. For other people it might look like electricity. It's going to really depend person to person what it's going to look like to you. So once you've got this energy centered, we are going to need to move it. And this draws on the energy manipulation technique that I've already spoken about. We're going to want to slowly guide that energy towards your most dominant hand, whichever one you feel most comfortable with. If you don't have particular mobility in your hands or you don't have use of your hands, you can use another area of your body, whether that is an arm, whether that is a leg, wherever it is that you can place an item that you are going to practice sensing will work for this. So if you don't have mobility in your hands, it isn't a deal breaker. You can definitely do this with other parts of your body. It's just a case of figuring out what works best for you. So you're going to direct this energy towards whichever area of your body you are going to want to have that item. Now, to start off with, you don't need to use an item. You can add items once you've practiced this technique several times to really start to sense that energy. But for me, I typically always use my right hand because I am right-handed, but for other people, it might be other locations depending on what suits you best. So you're going to want to slowly guide this energy from your central location up into the location or the extremity that you are going to be doing the energy sensing from. Now, if you are adept at energy sensing, you might be able to do this really quickly, but if you are new to it, if you can't get it there all in one go, that is completely normal. Energy sensing, energy manipulation, these practices are going to take time. The more practice that you have at them, the quicker you are going to be. So just take your time, even if it takes 5-10 minutes or several tries, that is completely normal, especially if you are starting out. So you're going to want to move that energy up and into the location that you're going to be working with. Now, for me, I'm going to be referring to this as a hand because that is what I would say most people are going to be working with. So once that energy is in the palm of your hand, you're going to feel it tingling or vibrating in the area that that energy is building up in. And what we need to do now is we need to push out that energy whilst still having control over it. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. For a lot of people just starting out, that energy is just going to dissipate immediately because it's very difficult to keep control of energy once it's external to ourselves. So it's going to take time, but you're going to want to visualize and push that energy out of your hand or wherever it is that you've chosen, but keep complete control over it. So you're going to want it to be just a centimeter away from your skin, and then push it out a little bit further to 2 centimeters away from your skin, and then a little bit further. And you're going to want to keep pushing it out and then drawing it back in, pushing it out and drawing it back in. And this is the bit that is probably going to take the most time and practice. The ability to keep complete control over that energy as it separates itself from you and then is drawn back in again. And this ultimately is what we want to achieve when it comes to energy sensing using this technique. It is a controlled method for energy sensing, which means ultimately you're able to turn it on or turn it off at will. Instead of constantly sensing energy 24/7, it allows us to actively choose when we do and when we don't sense energy. And it's all about this high level of control. So once you have got it so that energy is leaving your body and it's going further and further out, I would say stop at about 10 centimeters if you are just getting started. You really don't need to go any further than that just to start practicing, and then draw it back in again, and then practice again, and then draw it back in again. Now, you're going to have to do this several times over several days or weeks to really get the technique down. Once you've managed to have complete control over that energy as it leaves your hand and then returns again, you can then start adding in objects. Now, every object around us has its own energy, even plastic. And I'll admit, plastic has a little bit of a dull, kind of dead energy to it. It doesn't really feel like much, but try with different items around your home, different metals, different crystals if you have them, or if you don't, just stones from outside. You can often find gravel will have different types of rock in it, so you can really test sensing different energies and see what it feels like. Another technique that I've spoken about before is using sun water, moon water, and tap water, because these should, in theory, have 3 different types of energy that you will be able to sense. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hold it in your hand. So whether that is a small leaf, whether that is a crystal, a stone, a rock that you found outside, a piece of metal, a piece of jewelry, whatever it is, and you're going to do the same thing again. You're going to push your energy out of yourself, and you're going to allow it to settle around the object that's in your hand. And as it's settling around this object, it is going to be taking in some of the energy from that item. And then you draw your own energy and some of the energy from the item back again. And you may well find that your hand feels different. Different people that I've spoken to about this will say that the energy feels different. And it's very much a case of trial and error to figure out what it feels like to you. So for me, I find that energy feels like electricity. The stronger the energy of the item, the more electricity feeling I can get in my hand. And also, it feels as though my arm goes very heavy when I do have something with a great deal of energy in it. So it's very staticky, and then it also goes very heavy in my hand. And that's personally how it feels for me. However, I have spoken to friends in the community who say that strong energy feels hot, or it feels cold, or it feels very lightweight. And so everyone is gonna feel and sense energy differently. It's all about trial and error to figure out which sensations represent which form of energy that you are sensing, which is why using different items can be a really good gauge for this, and oftentimes why I recommend people using lunar water, solar water, and tap water, because they do have different energies, and so they will feel slightly differently. And so the goal behind this technique and this practice is you're going to want to try this with many different items. See how things feel. Do things feel heavy? Do things feel really hot in your hand? Do things feel really cold? Do you have an electric buzz? How strong is that electric buzz? Take note of all of these things. If you have a notebook, note them down. See if you get the same response from the same stone or from the same type of stone, the same plant or a similar type of plant, the same water, different waters. See what works, and you'll often find that ultimately with practice, you will be able to identify the energies simply by the feeling that it gives you. So for instance, with crystals, this is one of the most popular things that people use energy sensing for. You might be able to hold 2 pieces of rose quartz, and they'll both have the same energy because they're both rose quartz, but the intensity of that energy is going to vary stone per stone. And so you'll start to build up this understanding of how energy feels and what it is that you're going to base your decisions on, which is why ultimately a lot of practitioners say use what feels right, because essentially you're going to be working with the strength of the energy in that particular plant, that particular crystal, that oil, whatever it is that you're using. It's all about sensing the energy in that particular item and then making a decision of how you're going to use it and how much you're going to use in spell work and ritual. Now, once you've mastered this technique in a hand, try doing it on both hands simultaneously. See if you can sense the same energy from the same items in 2 different hands. I will often find that I sense energy better with my right hand than my left, but I will use both hands. And over time, if you struggle with one hand more than the other or one part of your body more than anything else, try and try and try so that ultimately you are able to sense energy on small areas no matter where it is that you have to sense that energy. Now, once you have mastered sensing energy on a small part of your body, you can then expand to sensing energy everywhere. Now, this is a little bit more difficult because keeping control of that energy in a small area is much easier than keeping control over energy that's everywhere. And this is why I typically recommend that you start small and then go from there. Now, sensing energy in your hands or over a small area is fine if you are doing tarot readings, if you are doing energy sensing and energy healing on a person or a pet or yourself. It's fine if you are going to be picking out crystals and stones, but if you do want to be sensing the energy of a room, whether that is because you want to pick up on people's emotions and their energies, or whether it's because you want to be sensing spirits, it definitely becomes a lot harder. So the technique in this is ultimately almost the same. You center that energy into that central location, and then rather than bringing that energy to a singular point, you are going to want to be building that energy and then splitting it equally across your entire body. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky, and this might take longer for people to master because keeping control of energy that is everywhere all at once is a lot harder to do. Now, once you have essentially a coating of energy that's just under the skin, you're then going to want to push it out. And once again, you're going to want to start by just going out a centimetre and then drawing it back in. then 2 centimeters, drawing it back in. And ultimately, you don't need to go too far to start off with, maybe 5-10 centimeters, just to kind of practice this repeatedly. And then make sure that you draw all of that energy back in. And that's the bit that's tricky. It's being able to draw all of the energy back in so you aren't losing any, which is what I typically refer to as an energy leak. If you do have a location where you can't effectively draw the energy back in again, you may well be kind of leaching energy out into the world, just completely inadvertently. So it's really important to make sure that you have control over all of the energy at once. So it could be worth trying some mind calming techniques before you do attempt this form of energy sensing to start off with, because any kind of distractions that are happening around you may well ultimately lead to you breaking your concentration and just suddenly releasing that energy, which isn't ideal. It's not really what you want to do. So I would say just start small, start manageable, and then just expand out further and further and further. And this is one way that people do ultimately create energy bubbles around them. They will essentially just force out their personal energy into a very temporary energy bubble, which allows them to deal with large crowds and situations without being bombarded with that energy. But it is definitely something that comes with time and practice. So once you've got it a few centimeters out, every day, just try it for a few minutes every day. You don't need to spend huge amounts of time working on this, which is why it is quite an accessible technique. It might sound very overwhelming, but if you're just doing this maybe 2 or 3 minutes a day, every day, that doesn't take up a huge amount of time. And even if you do struggle with concentration, just a few minutes might be enough for you to just slowly master it over time. So ultimately, the goal is for you to be able to push your energy out to fill an entire space. And this might feel a little overwhelming, especially if you've never sensed any strong energies before, and if you maybe have spirits in your property that you didn't even know that you had. So you're going to want to fill the room with your energy, putting it all the way up the walls, all the way over the ceiling, all the way under your feet, all around you. And then you can slowly, you don't need to be instantaneous with this, just draw that energy back in again. Now for me, the energy in the space ultimately looks a little like sonar. I don't know if you've ever seen sonar, but essentially I can almost create a map of that space 3D, and I can feel where the energy was in the room and also what it feels like. Because I'm drawing that energy in quite slowly, you definitely don't need to rush and do it all in one go. If you just do it slowly, you can really tell how far out that energy is, how far away from you is it, and you can really get a feel of the energy within that space. And once you've started doing this technique, you can then take it out and about with you. See what different plants, different environments feel like energetically. If you do have any green spaces nearby, try this around a very built up area and see how the environment around you feels energetically, and then go into a meadow or a garden or a forest and try it again and see how the different energies feel. And this is probably one of the many reasons why practitioners do prefer doing their rituals and spell work in certain locations, because once you are quite well versed in energy sensing, you might find that it does impact the workings that you do. And if you find that you have a disturbance in the energy around you at home, a lot of people will take their workings elsewhere to somewhere where the energy is not going to negatively impact them. So test it out in different locations. Does being by water feel any different? Does the type of water feel any different? Does a river feel different from a lake that feels different from a bog? Does a certain type of tree make a difference? Does birch feel different than oak, than willow? And see if you can pick up on the different energies and the way the energies feel for you. Now, it's important to remember that although certain people may feel strongly about certain types of crystals and stones and trees, everyone is going to react to them differently, because everyone's energy is going to be slightly different, which is why we can feel and we can sense different people's energy from around us. Now, if you get really good at this, you can essentially tell when someone is nearby if you can recognize their energy really easily. I know people that used to freak me out with this. They would send me a text when I walked into a building, even though they were nowhere near me. And it's because they were so good at energy sensing that they could just recognize when an individual person's energy entered into their field. Because essentially, once you learn to pick out different people's energies, if there's a particular person that has a certain energy that you can always recognize, you can essentially know where they are. It's kind of weird, kind of cool, but that all comes with time and it comes with practice. So don't get disheartened if you can't do much at first. It really is something that you are going to continuously use in your magical practice. Although I refer to these as basic principles or beginner practices, it is something that a lot of practitioners will continue to rehearse essentially through their entire magical practice. I'll still do it to this day. If I find that I'm in a bit of a slump with my magical practice, I'll go back to my basic practices. I'll go back to my centering, my grounding, my visualization, my energy manipulation, my energy sensing, and it really helps me to just reattune myself with the environment around me. And that can be a really good way if you are in a bit of a rut with your magical practice. Going back to the basic roots essentially of your magical practice might be really helpful to get yourself back into the swing of it again, especially if you have been stuck inside, which is what I've been doing recently. I've been going out into nature, doing some energy sensing, doing some grounding, and it just really helps me to reattune myself to the time and place that I'm in, and ultimately it betters me when I am sensing spirits, when I am working with spirits, when I am working with tarot. Ultimately it does just make everything so much easier. Now with energy sensing, the big thing to remember is that the more you know your own energy, the easier it is to sense and identify the energies around you. So if you don't know what your own energy feels like, if you haven't figured that out yet, I would definitely recommend taking some time to figure that out exactly first. Because if you can't separate your own energy from the energies that you are sensing, it can be really difficult to identify what it is that you're dealing with. Now, if you do have a group of friends, a group of people, a family, a coven that is working on energy sensing, there is a really interesting technique that I have used in a coven environment that was really, really cool. The idea behind this technique is that you work in pairs. Now, obviously, this can work with more than 2 people. Because we had quite an even number of people in our group, we all did it in pairs. One person sits on the chair facing away from you while you stand behind them. The idea behind this is that the person in the chair is going to be manipulating their energy. They are adding associations into that energy with intention and visualization to make it either hot or cold. And then once they've added all of this intention and the extra information into that energy, they're going to be sending it towards you. And your job is to sense that energy and identify whether it's hot or cold. And then once you've figured it out, they will tell you if it was hot or cold, or they will write it down in a little book that you can't see in front of you so that they aren't giving away what they're going to do next. And then you do this 4 or 5 times and they might double trick you. They might do cold twice in a row, or they might do hot and cold. But your job is not to try to think of what they're going to do. Your job is simply to focus on that energy, focus on what they're putting out. And this can be really good to build energy manipulation skills as well as visualization and intention adding skills. And ultimately for the person doing the energy sensing, it can be really useful to sense that energy and also to build up communication and better energy interaction within that group. I know that when we did this for the group that I was a part of, it was really, really fun. Thoroughly enjoyed it, where we would either think of the Arctic or the desert and it would be either cold or hot, and it was honestly probably one of the most memorable days that we spent together because it was so good to build up that energy and to better interact with one another ultimately, because we got to know each other's energies so much better. So if you are working in a group, that can be a really fun technique to use just to kind of train and practice your energy skills once you have mastered just pushing out your energy and then pulling it back in again. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it was useful. I'll be honest, this was probably one of the most difficult videos for me to film because trying to explain energy sensing in a concise way in one take is actually really hard. So I hope that this was useful to you. If you did enjoy it, feel free to give it a like. It really means so much to me. Let me know if you use this technique. I have met a lot of people who use a very similar technique, or do you use something different? Let me know. I always love hearing about other people's magical practice. If you would like to see the other videos in this playlist, the link to the playlist is up here and it's also in the description box. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, video ideas, or just want to chit chat with the community, feel free to post a comment down in the comment section. We also have a Discord server, the link is in the description box. And if you do enjoy the magical content on this channel in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I do try my best to post magical content every single week. Wow, I think I actually said that in one go. That is impressive. And if you do enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I do try my best with magical content every single week. I literally just said that. I am forgetting what I'm doing. So I hope you guys are all staying safe. I hope you have a marvellous magical day. A massive shout out to all of my amazing Patreons. Your names will be on the end screen in just a moment. Your support massively helps this channel and just keeps me going with everything. So thank you so much for your support. I hope you're all staying safe. I hope you have a marvellous magical day. I've already said that, but I hope to see you in the next video. Bye! My lipstick is still wet, which is why I'm talking like this. I actually look like a ghost. What is going on? I have noticed that this camera is doing weird things with lighting this week. I filmed like 2 videos, and one video I was like green, and then the next video I was like pink, and now I look dead. I mean, I'm kind of living for it. Hey everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So on today's video, we're going to be talking all about No, we're not. I mean, yeah, we are, but that's not what the intro is going to be. Do I like my hair? Actual serious question. Do I like my hair? I don't know. You know what? I'm not fixing it. It's 10 p.m. It's 10 p.m. Why am I starting this video at 10 p.m? I don't know. I ask myself this same question every time I film, and I have never been able to get a straight answer out of myself. Now, energy sensing is a really popular topic. I can't speak. Hiccups again. Oh, my back. I'm like a grandma, damn.